Long before Persia rose, before empires bled their names in stone, Elam heard the first whisper of destiny.
Its name stirs headlines, conjures fear, draws line. But centuries before it became a geopolitical flashpoint, before oil and uranium, before revolutions and sanctions, Iran had another identity. It was called Persia, and even before that, Elam. Few today realize that Iran's destiny did not begin with treaties or warfare, but with a prophecy. Ancient, sacred, inscribed in the Book of Beginnings. The Bible speaks of Elam, a son of Shem, descendant of Noah, ancestor of Abraham. Alongside him, Madai, born of Japheth. From these lines emerged the Medes and the Elamites, peoples scattered but remembered. Bloodlines forgotten by history, yet remembered by God. From these roots would rise an empire of gold and gardens. Persia, a kingdom vast, cultured, feared. It would conquer Babylon, shelter exiles, fund the rebuilding of Jerusalem. And yet it would also host the darkest plot against the Jewish people ever written into royal law. This is where our story begins, not in Israel, but in exile. Not with Moses or David, but with a young girl alone. Her name was Hadassah, known to the empire as Esther. An orphan, a foreigner, a woman, invisible to the courts of men, but seen by the eyes of heaven. Esther's story unfolds in a book like no other. The only book in all Scripture where the name of God is never spoken. There are no plagues, no fire from heaven, no angelic messengers. Just a girl, a crown, a plot, and a decision. And somehow, that is enough. Because God's name may be hidden, but his fingerprints are everywhere. Let us step into her world. The Persian king throws a banquet lasting 180 days, an empire, flaunting its wealth. When Queen Vashti refuses his command, she is cast aside. The throne is now vacant. A call is sent out. Gather the most beautiful virgins of the land. Hadassah is taken. She hides her identity. She wins favor, and she is crowned queen. But her true calling is still veiled. Meanwhile, Mordecai, her cousin and guardian, uncovers a conspiracy to kill the king. He reports it. The deed is recorded, but unrewarded. Then enters Haman, a descendant of Agag, the Amalekite king once spared by Saul. He is promoted, honored, adored. All must bow, but Mordecai refuses. In fury, Haman devises not just vengeance, but genocide. He casts Lot's Purim to determine the day. A decree is sent on the 13th day of the 12th month. All Jews in all provinces shall be destroyed. Panic spreads. Mourning engulfs the Jewish community. Mordecai weeps in sackcloth outside the palace. Esther, insulated in luxury, sends him clothing, but clothes cannot cover a nation's fear. He sends her this word: "Do not think you will escape in the king's house. And who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Esther hears, and she answers, not with haste, but humility. "Go, gather all the Jews. Fast for me, I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." 3 days. No food, no water, no assurances. Just faith. Then she rises. She enters. The law's clear approach the king unsummoned, and you die unless he extends the golden scepter. He does. She lives, but she does not speak yet. Wisdom waits. She invites him to a feast, and another. Meanwhile, Haman builds gallows 75 feet high. His hatred towers. At the second feast, the moment comes. Esther reveals, "We have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed." The king is enraged. Haman begs, but justice arrives. He is hanged on the gallows he built. Yet the decree still stands. Persian law cannot be reversed. So the king issues a second decree: the Jews may defend themselves. They do. On the appointed day they rise. They are not aggressors, they are survivors. Victory is theirs. And from this, the Feast of Purim is born. It means Lot's a dark plan overturned by divine design. But this story is not just ancient memory. It is prophetic blueprint. Because Persia, now Iran, still walks the pages of prophecy. In Ezekiel 38, Persia stands among the nations who will rise against Israel in the latter days. And yet, Jeremiah 49 offers a parallel vision. God declares judgment upon Elam, but ends with this: "In the latter days I will restore the fortunes of Elam." Judgment and hope, wrath and mercy, always both. So what does Esther teach us? She teaches that silence is not absence. That risk is the womb of redemption. That a woman hidden behind curtains can shift the fate of nations. Esther is Israel surrounded, targeted, yet preserved. She is also the church called in exile, crowned for intercession. And perhaps she is you. Because maybe you too were born for such a time as this. And maybe, just maybe, in the quietest stories, the loudest truths are born. Like if this story made you reflect. Comment what surprised you most about Esther's silence and courage. Share this with someone walking their own hidden calling. Have you ever felt like you were placed for such a time as this? And now, before Esther ever wore a crown, before Haman rose to power, before the scepter extended, there was a prophecy, there was a promise. There was a land called Elam. Let us return to the very first mention of Iran in Scripture, when it was nothing more than a name in a genealogy, a forgotten bloodline carrying the seeds of destiny. Before thrones and decrees, before Haman's hatred and Esther's courage, before the royal court of Persia ever shimmered under the sun, there were two forgotten names, Elam and Madai. Their names appear only briefly in Genesis 10, what many call the Table of Nations. A list, a genealogy, easy to skip. But God never skips. He speaks in what we overlook. Elam was the son of Shem, the line of Abraham, the line of covenant. Madai was the son of Japheth, the ancestor of the Gentiles, the widespread nations of the earth. Two brothers, two destinies. Their descendants would one day join together in the forge of empire to become one of history's greatest powers, Persia. And Persia would become Iran. Elam's legacy begins in silence. His name fades from Genesis only to rise again unexpectedly in the first war of the Bible. In Genesis 14, we meet Chedorlaomer, king of Elam. He leads a coalition of 4 kings against the 5 kings of the Jordan Plain, Sodom, Gomorrah, and their neighbors. It's not just a war. It's the first global conflict of the ancient world, and Elam leads it. They win. They seize cities. They capture Lot, the nephew of Abraham. But then a shepherd pursues them. Abraham, with just 318 trained men, defeats the Elamite king. Lot is rescued, and Elam, though powerful, falls. It is the first echo of a theme that will repeat through history. No matter how mighty a nation may be, it cannot prevail against the covenant. Elam may have led armies, but Abraham carried promise. Still, Elam's story was far from over. Centuries passed, empires shifted, and once again the name Elam rises in the voice of prophets. Isaiah speaks of Elam's destruction. Jeremiah, more strikingly, devotes an entire oracle to the nation. This is what the Lord Almighty says: "I will break the bow of Elam, the mainstay of their might. I will bring the 4 winds against Elam. I will shatter them before their foes. Yet in the last days I will restore the fortunes of Elam." Judgment and mercy, collapse and hope, all held in one breath. God is not finished with Elam, but Elam is not alone. Alongside them the Medes rise. From Madai came a people of the north, skilled, warlike, strategic. The Medes allied with the Persians, and together they toppled Babylon. The prophet Daniel, standing as a captive in that very empire, saw it before it happened. In visions and dreams, he described the Medo-Persian alliance as a bear raised up on one side, as a ram with two horns, as the silver chest and arms in Nebuchadnezzar's statue, symbols not just of strength but of timing. God doesn't just predict, he appoints. And so Elam and Madai, once just names in a list, become kings and kingdoms. Persia is born. The empire is immense. It stretches from India to Ethiopia. It is rich in gold, vast in languages, and complex in law. It builds roads, coins, palaces. It reshapes the ancient world. And yet, within its gates, a Jewish orphan will rise. But we're not there yet. Because Persia's greatness lies not just in its borders, but in its paradox. It is Persia that God uses to bring down Babylon, the captor of his people. It is Persia through Cyrus that sends the exiles home and funds the rebuilding of the temple. Cyrus, named by Isaiah over a century before his birth, is called "my shepherd" by God. An empire of Gentiles becomes the tool of heaven. But it is also Persia that nearly destroys the Jews through Haman's decree. It is Persia that forces Esther into crisis. It is Persia where God seems absent yet is quietly working. This contradiction, this duality was seeded from the start. Elam was born of Shem, the blessed line, but turned against Abraham. Madai was born of Japheth outside the covenant, yet his descendants aided Israel. One line rebelled, one line redeemed, and both God still used. So what does this mean for us? It means the prophetic history of Iran begins not in its politics, but in its people, not in its armies, but in its ancestry. Before Iran was a regime, it was a prophecy. Before it held missiles, it held promises. Before it defied Israel, it descended from her kin. When God speaks of nations, he does not only see their present rebellion, he remembers their roots. He remembers Elam, and he will restore Elam. That is the tension of prophecy, justice, and restoration, wrath and return. Iran today seems far from that promise. But prophecy is patient. And as we turn the page from genealogy to queenship, from the table of nations to the throne of Persia, we must remember Esther's story is built on ancient names, forgotten by men, remembered by God. Her courage stands upon their legacy. Her moment of choice echoes their ancient decisions. And so the next time you hear the word Iran, remember, it is not just a nation. It is a name spoken first in Genesis, destined to rise again. And its story has only just begun. Persia. By the time Esther walks its marble halls, the empire is immense. It stretches from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces in all. It speaks many tongues. It bathes in gold. Its kings command from thrones of ivory, and its laws are said to be unchangeable. But what matters most is not its splendor. It is its strange role in God's story. Persia, though pagan, becomes the silent servant of the God of Israel. To understand this, we must go back. Not to Esther, not yet, but to Cyrus. He is the founder of the Persian Empire, a warrior, a visionary, and yet more than that, a vessel. Long before Cyrus was born, the prophet Isaiah wrote, "This is what the Lord says to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I take hold of, to subdue nations before him. I will go before you and level the mountains, though you have not known me." Isaiah 45. God calls a Gentile king his anointed, a word usually reserved for priests, prophets, or kings of Israel. Why? Because Cyrus would do what no Israelite had the power to do. He would end the Babylonian captivity. He would send the Jews home. He would command the rebuilding of the temple. Cyrus did not worship Yahweh, but he fulfilled his word. He is mentioned by name in the Bible over 150 years before his birth. This is the mystery of providence. God can use anyone, any nation, any ruler for his purposes. Cyrus conquers Babylon in 539 BC. It is not just a political shift, it is a prophetic pivot. The Jews exiled for 70 years are free. In Ezra chapter 1 we read, In the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord moved the heart of Cyrus to make a proclamation. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem. Cyrus not only permits, he provides. He sends the exiles with silver gold animals and offerings. He returns the temple vessels that Nebuchadnezzar had stolen. Imagine that. A pagan king rebuilding God's house. This is Persia's paradox. It is the empire of Esther and Haman, but also of Cyrus and redemption. It is the kingdom of both danger and deliverance. And the pattern continues. After Cyrus, his successors Darius and Artaxerxes continue to support the Jewish people. In the days of Nehemiah, Artaxerxes grants him permission to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. He provides letters of safe passage. He sends timber from royal forests. Again, Persia, the Gentile empire, becomes the means of Israel's restoration. But there is more. Daniel the prophet, though a captive, serves in the courts of Persia. He interprets dreams, he writes visions, and he sees far into the future. In Daniel 10, he fasts for 21 days. An angel appears and says, "The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me." A spiritual battle is hinted at. Persia is not just a physical kingdom, but has heavenly counterparts. Then the angel says, "Soon I will return to fight against the prince of Persia, and after that, the prince of Greece will come." It is a timeline. Persia now, Greece next. But even in this warfare, Daniel is told, "No one stands firmly with me against these forces, except Michael your prince." Michael, protector of Israel, is involved. The stakes are cosmic. And yet on earth, Persia remains unaware. It continues its path. It builds, it rules, it hosts both the deliverers and the destroyers. This is what makes Esther's story so striking. Because by the time we reach her, Persia is at the height of its glory. The palace at Susa gleams. The court is filled with eunuchs, nobles, astrologers. And into this grandeur walks a Jewish orphan, Hadassah, Esther. She is not a conqueror, not a prophet. She carries no scroll, no sword, only silence. And yet, it is her silence that will save her people. Because Persia's strength lies not in its armies or architecture, but in its position. God placed it at the center of empires. He raised it to accomplish tasks his people could not. He used its laws to fulfill his promises. He shaped its rulers to open doors no priest could unlock. And when Esther walks those halls, she walks them not as a trophy, but as a thread in a divine tapestry. Persia becomes the stage. The Jewish people, once scattered, exiled, forgotten, are now positioned across its provinces. The threat is total. The risk is global. And God, he remains silent. No voice from heaven, no burning bush. Just a girl and a choice. But before that choice comes the context. Persia, its laws, its customs, its timing. Everything had to be precise. That is how providence works. It weaves through policy and pride, through kings and queens, through edicts and delays. God used Cyrus to rebuild his house. He will now use Esther to preserve his people. And Persia will never even know that it served the living God, that it became unwittingly a sacred servant. Esther, her name means star, but when we first meet her, she does not shine. She is hidden, covered in another name, Hadassah, an orphan, a foreigner, a girl with no father, no mother, and no future. And yet she is chosen not by chance, but by providence. The story begins with a scandal. King Ahasuerus, better known by his Greek name Xerxes, throws a banquet lasting 180 days. Then another for 7 days more. The wine flows freely. The royal court flaunts its wealth from marble pillars to golden goblets. In a moment of pride, the king commands Queen Vashti to appear so he can display her beauty before drunken nobles. She refuses. In fury, the king deposes her. The throne beside him is now empty. And so begins the search. Across 127 provinces, the most beautiful virgins are gathered. They are not invited. They are taken. Among them is Hadassah. Mordecai, her older cousin who raised her, tells her to hide her identity. Say nothing of your people. Say nothing of your God. And so she does. Esther enters the palace under a name that means star and hides the roots of her soul. She undergoes 12 months of preparation, 6 with oil of myrrh, 6 with spices and perfumes. When her turn comes, she asks for nothing extra. And yet she finds favor. She is crowned queen. But no one knows she's Jewish. Not the king, not the court, not even the enemy. That enemy is about to emerge. His name is Haman. He is promoted above all the other officials. The king commands that all must bow before him, and all do except Mordecai. Haman burns with rage, but he does not seek revenge only on Mordecai. He wants extermination, genocide. He casts lots Purim to choose the day. Then he approaches the king. There is a certain people scattered among your provinces. Their customs are different. They do not obey the king's laws. It is not in your interest to tolerate them. The king, trusting Haman, agrees. He gives him his signet ring. A decree is written and sent to every province in every language. On the 13th day of the 12th month, all Jews, young and old, women and children, are to be destroyed, killed and annihilated, and their property plundered. The empire shudders. In every province there is mourning, fasting and weeping. But inside the palace, Esther does not know. She is insulated, protected by luxury, guarded by eunuchs, dressed in silk. But danger knows no walls. Mordecai sends word. He stands at the king's gate, clothed in sackcloth. He refuses to be comforted. Esther hears. She sends garments to him. But clothes cannot cover grief. Mordecai sends back a message not with advice, but with destiny. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Esther is shaken. For the first time, she must choose. She is no longer just a girl. She is a queen, and queens must act. But the law is clear, no one may approach the king unless summoned. To do so is death unless the golden scepter is extended. Esther replies, "Go, gather all the Jews who are in Susa. Fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. 3 days, 3 nights, silence. No dreams, no visions, no signs, just fasting." And then Esther rises. She puts on her royal robes. She stands in the inner court and waits. The king sees her and extends the golden scepter. She touches its tip and lives, but she does not plead right away. She invites the king and Haman to a banquet. There she says nothing. She invites them again to a second banquet. Esther is not stalling. She is waiting. Timing matters. Providence breathes in, pauses. Between the feasts, Haman builds gallows 75 feet tall to hang Mordecai. That night the king cannot sleep. He orders the royal records to be read. They find the report of Mordecai uncovering a plot to assassinate the king, an act long unrewarded. The king asks, "What honor was given to Mordecai?" The answer, none. In the morning, the king commands Haman to honor Mordecai publicly. The enemy becomes the herald. The proud bows low. Then comes the second banquet. The king asks, "What is your petition, Queen Esther?" She answers, "If I have found favor in your eyes, grant me my life, and spare my people. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." The king is stunned. He asks, "Who would do such a thing?" Esther turns. An adversary, an enemy, this vile Haman. The room spins. Haman pleads. But judgment is swift. He is hanged on the gallows he built for Mordecai. Yet the decree remains. The law of the Medes and Persians cannot be revoked, but a new decree can be written. The Jews may defend themselves, and on the appointed day they do. They rise, they stand, they overcome. Victory is theirs, and from their deliverance a feast is born. It is called Purim, named for the lots Haman cast, but redeemed by the hand of God. Esther's story ends in celebration. But beneath the victory, something deeper is at work. There is no mention of God's name in the entire book. No miracles, no prophets, no divine voice. And yet his fingerprints are everywhere. This is not a flaw in the story. It is the heart of the story. Esther reveals the holy paradox. When God hides, he is not distant, he is deliberate. This is not coincidence. It is revelation. Esther shows us what it means to live when God feels hidden but is never absent. Let's return to that moment, the silence before Esther approached the king. 3 days of fasting. No vision, no angel, just stillness. This is where faith lives, in the gap between action and assurance. Esther had no sign that the scepter would be extended, no guarantee of mercy. She stepped forward anyway. She stood and hoped. And that is often how deliverance comes. Not in lightning, not in fire, but in the quiet obedience of one who refuses to turn away. The Jews in Persia did not have a Moses. They had a girl in a crown. They did not have plagues or parted seas. They had secret fasts and royal favor. And still, God delivered. That is the theme of Purim. Deliverance that comes through natural means directed by unseen hands. Mordecai overhears a plot. Esther is chosen. Haman casts lots. The king can't sleep. These are not miracles. They are mercies in motion. And they reveal something profound. God governs even when he seems silent. In a time of exile, when the temple lay far away and Jerusalem was only a memory, God was still at work. In palaces, in politics, in banquets and beauty treatments, in conversations between eunuchs, in forgotten scrolls read at midnight. He was there, always. This is the theology of hiddenness. It's easy to believe in God when the Red Sea parts, harder when the door is closed and the crown feels heavy. But Esther teaches us, silence does not mean absence, and hiddenness is often where God works best. There is also another theme beneath the surface reversal. The book of Esther is filled with reversals. Haman builds gallows but is hanged on them himself. Mordecai wears sackcloth but is robed in honor. Esther, an orphan, becomes queen. A decree of death becomes a day of victory. The lots cast to destroy become the name of a feast. God takes what was meant for evil and turns it. He is not only a deliverer, he is a reverser, a redeemer of days, a restorer of names. And there is one more mystery. The name of God is hidden in the book of Esther, but some scholars believe it is hidden in plain sight. In the original Hebrew text, certain acrostics, first letters of consecutive words, spell out the divine name Wauch. It's not obvious in translation, but it's there, buried like a whisper in the text. A sign that even when his name is hidden, his will is not. This too is prophetic, because Esther's story foreshadows a larger one, another Jewish deliverer, another silence, another reversal. Centuries later, another royal decree would go out, this time from Rome. Another innocent would face death. And once again, God would appear silent. No angels at Gethsemane, no voice at Golgotha, just silence and sacrifice. But on the third day, another reversal, another deliverance. And here is the connection we must not miss. Esther's courage protected the Jewish people so that the lineage of the Messiah could survive. The Feast of Purim precedes the cross. The silence of Esther prepares us for the silence of Jesus. The hidden hand in Persia becomes the pierced hand in Jerusalem. This is the tapestry of redemption, woven from exile and empire, woven from women and warriors, woven in palaces and on crosses. Esther is not just history. It is pattern. It is prophecy. It is the story of a people preserved not by armies or miracles, but by providence. By a God who hides, so we will seek. Who stays silent, so we will speak. who works in shadows to shine light. This is why Purim is not just a feast. It is a reminder that even in exile, God is near, that even in darkness He sees, that even in danger He acts. And perhaps this is why Esther was given two names: Hadassah, her Hebrew identity; Esther, her Persian disguise. One name means myrtle, humble and rooted. The other means star, distant and shining. She lived in both worlds, and through her God reached both, the hidden and the revealed, the Jewish and the Gentile, the lowly and the royal. The book of Esther ends with joy. But the real triumph is not celebration. It is remembrance that God delivers even when He does not speak, that He reverses even when all seems lost, that He rules even in exile. The book of Esther ends with peace, but the empire it unfolds in Persia is far from finished. After Esther and Mordecai, after the salvation of the Jews and the Feast of Purim, history marches forward. Persia remains powerful, but the seeds of something new and something dangerous are already being sown. Let us return to the timeline. Esther's story takes place during the reign of Xerxes I, around 480 BC. His son Artaxerxes I will continue the Persian legacy, granting Nehemiah permission to rebuild Jerusalem's walls. But cracks are forming in the empire. Persia's enemies, especially Greece, are rising. The Persian-Greek wars, which had already begun in the days of Darius and Xerxes, will escalate, and soon Persia will fall. In 331 BC, the great conqueror Alexander the Great defeats the Persian king Darius III at the Battle of Gaugamela. Persia, once the largest empire in the world, crumbles before Greek power. The prophecy given to Daniel is fulfilled. The Prince of Greece will come. Daniel 10:20. But the end of Persia is not just political. It is spiritual. You see, Persia had been a tool in God's hand. It restored the Jews. It preserved their people. It housed Daniel, Nehemiah, Esther, and Mordecai. It funded the rebuilding of Jerusalem. It protected the covenant bloodline. But like Babylon before it and Rome after it had a limit. It served for a season. Then it fell. This is the rhythm of kingdoms in Scripture. They rise by permission. They fall by design. And in their rise and fall, God speaks. Yet Persia's influence does not vanish. Long after its fall, echoes of its rule remain. In the East, in what is now Iran, Jewish communities thrive for centuries. They speak Persian. They write in Hebrew. They celebrate Purim with deep emotion. The tombs of Esther and Mordecai still stand in Hamadan, Iran, today, a testament to the story's deep roots. Even as empires change, memory remains. And Persia's legacy stretches further. Zoroastrianism, the ancient Persian religion, influences thought across Asia. Its concepts of light versus darkness, final judgment, and moral dualism echo through time. Some scholars believe the Magi who came to worship the infant Jesus in Bethlehem may have come from Persia. Wise men from the East, drawn by a star. Esther's story begins with her hidden name, Star. And centuries later, it ends with literal stargazers seeking a greater king. But Persia's spiritual arc is not all light. In time, the region that once preserved the Jews would become a land of persecution. Under later Islamic dynasties, tolerance would rise and fall. By the 20th century, Iran still had a strong Jewish population, upwards of 100,000. Today, only a few thousand remain. Many have fled. The story has shifted, but it has not ended. Because the prophetic arc of Persia continues. In Ezekiel 38, the prophet speaks of a future invasion. A coalition of nations, Magog, Meshech, Tubal, led by Gog, will rise against Israel. And among the names listed is Persia. Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them, prepared for battle. Ezekiel 38:5. This prophecy has not yet been fulfilled, but many see signs already forming. Iran. Modern-day Persia is one of the most outspoken adversaries of Israel today. Its leaders call for the destruction of the Jewish state. Its weapons are pointed west. Its alliances grow darker. And yet, within its borders, faith remains. Despite persecution, underground churches flourish in Iran. Testimonies rise, hearts turn. Jesus, called Isa in Islam, is being revealed not by force, but by dreams, visions, and courage. The hidden hand of God moves again. From Esther's royal court to Iran's hidden house churches, from palace banquets to prison conversions, God is still writing the story. Persia, once the protector of the Jews, now appears poised against them. But prophecy sees further than politics. It sees redemption. In Isaiah 19, a stunning vision unfolds. In that day, there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria, and Israel will be the third, along with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing on the earth. The Lord will bless them, saying, "Blessed be Egypt, my people, Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, my inheritance." Isaiah 19, 23-25. Though Persia is not named directly, the message is clear. Former enemies will one day become partners in peace. This is not only a political dream, it is a spiritual prophecy that the descendants of those who once ruled over Israel will one day worship alongside them. That out of the ashes of empire, faith will rise. So what becomes of Persia? Its name is changed to Iran in 1935. Its past is long and layered. It was once the seat of kings, the cradle of decrees, the home of Esther. Now it is a land of both resistance and revival, a land trembling between hostility and hope. It stands on the edge of prophecy, a land once used by God, now once more watched by heaven. Mordecai was never king. He wore no crown, he sat at no throne, but he was always watching. The book of Esther introduces him not as a prophet or priest, but as a man sitting at the king's gate. And that is where his power lies. The gate was more than a doorway. In ancient Persia, the king's gate was a place of judgment, diplomacy, and law. It was where matters of state were discussed, where edicts were read, where insiders gathered. And Mordecai was always there. He saw what others missed. He heard what others ignored. He watched while others hurried by. And because he watched, he acted. It was at the gate that Mordecai uncovered the assassination plot. Two eunuchs, angry and bitter, conspired against the king. No angel warned the court. No miracle interrupted their plan. But Mordecai heard and reported, and the king was saved. This moment, small and almost forgotten, will later change the entire story. Because one night, years later, the king cannot sleep, and he calls for the royal records. And someone reads the account of a forgotten man at the gate who once saved a life. Mordecai's gift was not charisma, it was vigilance. He was not loud, he was faithful. He did not seek power, he was positioned near it to protect others. He is what Scripture calls a watchman. In Ezekiel, God speaks to the prophet, "Son of man, I have made you a watchman. Whenever you hear a word from my mouth, give them warning from me." Ezekiel 3:17. A watchman does not control the city. He guards it. He stays awake when others sleep. He sounds the alarm when danger nears. He is the unseen protector standing in silent readiness. Mordecai is Israel in exile, powerless in title, but powerful in timing. He is the whisper behind the scenes, the steady presence, the faithful uncle, the man who raises a girl for greatness while expecting nothing in return. He teaches Esther courage. He warns her when to wait and when to rise. He fasts when she fasts. He weeps when his people are condemned. He walks in sackcloth, yet dreams in Scripture. Mordecai is the heart of the story. He does not wear a crown, but he lifts it onto Esther's head. And here lies the mystery. Mordecai is not just a man, he is a mirror. He reflects the quiet strength of God, unseen, uncelebrated, unyielding. He is providence in human form. His journey mirrors Joseph, raised in a foreign court, hated by the powerful, promoted by the king, used to save his people. Like Joseph, Mordecai was once overlooked. But like Joseph, he is remembered in due time. In chapter 6, the great reversal begins. Haman walks into the court planning to hang Mordecai. But before he can speak, the king asks, "What should be done for the man the king delights to honor?" Haman, assuming the honor is for himself, gives a lavish suggestion. And the king replies, "Go at once. Get the robe and the horse and do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew." The humiliation is total. The man who built the gallows becomes the servant. The man in sackcloth is now honored in the streets. This is divine irony. This is justice. This is the hand of God. And in time, Mordecai rises. When Esther reveals the plot and Haman falls, Mordecai is elevated to Haman's position. He becomes second in command. But unlike Haman, he uses his power not to destroy, but to deliver. He writes new edicts. He arms the Jews. He secures their survival. And when the dust settles, he is still there, still faithful, still watching, still at the gate. The final verses of Esther say, Mordecai, the Jew, was second in rank to King Xerxes. He was held in high esteem because he worked for the good of his people and spoke up for the welfare of all the Jews. Esther 10:3. He did not seek fame. He sought the good of others. He was not born royal, but he stood like a king. And here is where the story turns inward. Because every generation needs a Mordecai, a voice of courage behind the curtain, a man or woman who prays when others forget, who teaches the next generation, who watches at the gate. Esther may be the star, but Mordecai is the sky that lets her shine. Esther lived in exile. She did not choose Persia. She did not seek the crown. She was chosen for such a time as this. And that is why her story speaks to the church. Like Esther, the church does not reign in worldly power. It does not sit on earthly thrones. It is scattered across nations, languages, and cultures. It lives in a world that often does not understand it, sometimes fears it, and at times seeks to destroy it. The church, like Esther, must learn to walk in wisdom in a foreign court, to speak with courage, to fast with conviction, to act even when the cost is great. The parallels are striking. Esther hides her identity until the moment comes. She is a part of the culture, but not of it. She walks in two worlds and waits on God. So does the church. In 1 Peter, believers are called a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, strangers and exiles in the world. 1 Peter 2:9-11. We are in the palace, but not at home. We are under foreign kings, but called by the King of heaven. We too are crowns in exile. Esther's moment of decision. If I perish is not just bravery. It is intercession. She risks her life to stand before a throne on behalf of her people. And this is the church's call, to stand in prayer, to fast for others, to carry burdens, to face kings and plead for mercy. Esther shows us the cost of silence. Mordecai warns her, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. This is not a threat, it is a truth. God's purposes will prevail, but our participation matters. If we are silent when we are called to speak, we miss the moment. The church must not be silent. And like Esther, the church must wait. She fasted 3 days. She prepared her approach. She did not rush. She aligned with God's timing, and only then did she act. This is not weakness. It is discernment. The church must learn to wait on the Spirit, to fast before it speaks, to seek favor before it fights. Esther's story also warns us. It shows how evil can rise through influence. Haman had access. Haman had favor. Haman had the king's ring. And with it, he almost destroyed an entire people. The church must be wise in power. Not all who rise in courts are righteous. Not every decree is from God. We must discern spirits and watch the gate. There is also a prophetic message in Esther. God's name is never mentioned, not once. Yet his hand is everywhere. This is how the church often experiences God. Not in thunder or miracles, but in timing, in turns of fate, in favor that cannot be explained. Esther's story teaches the church to trust when God is silent, to believe when the script has no voice, to follow the path of providence even in exile. B. Because just as quickly as Haman rose, he fell. Just as silently as Mordecai waited, he was exalted. God is never outmaneuvered. Esther reminds the church that God is always in control, even in silence, even in exile, even in Persia. And Esther reminds us that one voice can change, one fast, one risk, one approach to the throne. The church may feel small, but it carries the authority of the king. When it speaks with wisdom and moves in faith, nations shift. There's another layer to this story. Esther prepared herself for 12 months, 6 with oil, 6 with spices. Before she met the king, it was not just cosmetic, it was consecration. The church too must be purified, anointed with oil, the Holy Spirit, scented with incense, prayer and worship. Before we approach the world, we must dwell with God. In the end, Esther does. She leaves behind a legacy, a feast, a remembrance, a rhythm of redemption. Purim is more than a party. It is a pattern. It teaches us to remember that even when God is hidden, He is working. That even when exile surrounds us, His throne still rules. So the church must live like Esther, royal, yet humble, bold, yet prayerful, hidden, yet ready. Because perhaps like her, we were born for such a time as this. The book of Esther is the only book in the Bible where God's name is never mentioned. Not once. No Yahweh, no Elohim, no Lord. The divine voice is silent. The heavens remain still. Miracles do not descend. And yet His fingerprints are everywhere. This is the paradox of Esther. The God who does not speak still acts. The God who is not named still governs. His name is hidden, but His hand is not. This silence is not absence. It is invitation. Esther's story invites us to look deeper, to train the eyes of faith, to recognize the shape of God in the shadows. Because not every miracle is loud. Not every act of God is thunder and fire. Sometimes He moves in silence. This is the experience of many believers. There are seasons when the voice fades, when prayers feel unanswered, when heaven seems quiet. And yet, we keep moving, we keep trusting, we keep obeying, because Esther teaches us that silence is not the end of the story. It is the place where faith grows. Think of the coincidences. Esther is taken to the palace just as a vacancy opens. She wins favor among hundreds of women. Mordecai overhears a plot just in time. The king can't sleep on the very night Haman plans a murder. These are not accidents. They are the rhythm of providence. A divine choreography hidden in plain sight. God does not need to speak to be present. He does not need to shout to direct history. He moves through dreams, delays decrees and decisions. He works through queens and eunuchs, scribes and gatekeepers. He is the invisible author writing a very visible story. Esther is a mirror for every believer who walks through silence, for every exile who prays without answers, for every intercessor who fasts in the dark, for every Mordecai who watches at the gate wondering if anyone sees. The story says he sees. It also reminds us that God's silence is sometimes our training. Esther had to step forward without a burning bush, without an angelic visitor, without a clear word from heaven. She had to trust in the dark. This is deep faith, not built on signs but on surrender. And there is another truth. God's name is hidden in Esther because His people had hidden Him. Persia was a place of compromise. The Jews had not all returned to Jerusalem. Some had grown comfortable in exile. Their identity was fading. Their worship was quiet. And so God's name fell silent, not in anger, but in longing, waiting for someone to remember. And Esther did. When the moment came, she called for a fast. No feasts, no perfumes, no applause. Just fasting, just prayer, just waiting. And in that moment, heaven moved. Because though God's name is hidden, His heart is not. Esther shows us how to walk through the silent places, with courage, with discipline, with trust. It's easy to believe when red seas part, harder when the sky is quiet. But the same God rules both. Even the name Esther means hidden, and her other name Hadassah means myrtle, a plant that blossoms in dry places. She is the flower of faith, blooming in silence. She is the reminder that even when the story lacks signs, the author is still writing. The church needs Esther's silence. We need the reminder that faith is not always fire, that the Spirit can speak through stillness, that divine power often wears the mask of the mundane. We need to look again at the coincidences, the delays, the closed doors that led to unexpected moments. What if they weren't random? What if God is still speaking in whispers? Even today, millions of believers live under silence. In North Korea, underground churches whisper in the dark. In Iran, believers come to Christ through dreams, not sermons. In China, pastors are imprisoned, but the gospel still spreads. There is no public voice, no legal protection, no open celebration. And yet God moves. He still writes salvation stories in silence. The Jews of Persia faced extinction, but God's silence was not abandonment. It was strategy. He raised up a woman. He placed a man at the gate. He wrote a salvation story without once writing his name. And yet by the end, the people rejoiced. They celebrated Purim not because of thunder, but because of quiet deliverance. So let us not fear the silence. Let us lean into it. Let us fast in it, pray in it, wait in it, and like Esther, act in it. Because though his name may be hidden, his presence is never absent. Purim is more than a feast. It is a memory wrapped in mystery, a celebration of survival, a rhythm of reversal. Every year, Jews gather to read the Megillah, the scroll of Esther. They cheer for Mordecai. They hiss at Haman. They feast and rejoice. But beneath the surface of celebration lies prophecy. The story of Esther is not just about the past. It is a pattern of the end. A king, a plot, a hidden people, a day of judgment reversed, a royal decree of death rewritten into life. Esther is the blueprint of divine rescue, and Purim is its echo. The prophets hint at this reversal. Zechariah speaks of a day when fasting becomes feasting. Isaiah promises beauty for ashes. Joel declares, "I will restore the years the locusts have eaten." Daniel sees the kingdoms fall and one kingdom rise forever. Purim foreshadows a future moment when God's people surrounded by darkness are delivered in light, when edicts of death are overturned by heavenly decrees, when the enemy's noose becomes the Lord's trumpet. And like Purim, the end will be noisy. Children will shout, scrolls will be read, enemies will fall. But it will also be sacred. Because like Mordecai, the church will rise. Like Esther, the bride will speak. And like Persia, the kingdoms of this world will witness the God they never named. This is why the church must study Purim, not to merely remember a past event, but to discern a coming one. There will be plots, there will be silence, there will be fasts, but there will also be victory. Because the same God who reversed Haman's decree still sits on the throne. The pattern of Purim repeats through history. In 1941, Hitler planned to liquidate the Jews of Europe. It was Purim, the same ancient hatred, the same ancient plot. And in 1946, at the Nuremberg trials, 10 Nazi leaders were executed for crimes against humanity. One of them, Julius Streicher, shouted before he died, "Purim Fest 1946. Even evil knows the calendar." Esther shows us how to live at the edge of history and hide when it is not yet time. Pray when the night is long. Wait when the moment has not come. Speak when the silence is heavy. Stand when the crown trembles. And act when the gates of death creak open. The date Haman chose for destruction became the date of deliverance. The very hour of genocide became a festival of joy. This is not coincidence. It is divine comedy. It is holy reversal. It is what the cross became for the church, a place of death turned to resurrection. The scroll of Esther ends in peace. So does the Bible. Revelation closes not with fear, but with feast. Not with enemies, but with a wedding. A bride made ready. A city coming down. A scroll now unsealed. And a king who never left the throne. So celebrate Purim not just with noise, but with vision. It is more than a Jewish holiday. It is a prophetic rehearsal. It is the whisper of what is to come. Because what happened in Persia will happen again. The enemy will rise. The church will fast. The Spirit will move. And the King will deliver. If this story stirred your heart, like this video. Subscribe for more sacred retellings. Comment below. What part of Esther's journey spoke to your life? Share this with someone walking through silence or exile. Thank you for spending this sacred time with us. May your faith stand firm in silence, your crown not slip in exile, and your spirit shine for such a time as this. Verse and wisdom, sacred stories, spoken deeply.